Buying land is a single decision that shapes everything after. I knew when I purchased this parcel, if I misjudged the land, everything that would happen after would be harder. Farming doesn't start with your crops. It starts with a plot. The access, the soil, the topography, the water rights. So in this video, I'm going to be going over a universal land checklist that you can use to evaluate a plot before committing. Let's get started. So here's my universal land checklist. Basically, whenever you're looking at a parcel of land, you want to go through all these categories and you don't want it to fail in any particular category. Okay, it's okay if it doesn't have perfect qualities for all of these things. For example, it doesn't need perfect water, perfect like topography, like it's a super flat log. You don't need those things, but it can't fail. So the goal is it doesn't have awful topography or it doesn't have access. You know, these type of things will sink your project. So keep that in mind, okay? So we'll get started with the first one here. So this video is the second video in the farm fundamental series, so you should have an idea of what type of farm you already want to have, okay? And if you don't have an idea, you can watch that first video. So once you know what farm you have, you can look for plots that match the requirement, right? Now, you need to first make sure that the actual lot code, that the county zone code works with your lot, right? So it can't be like a residential code and you want to build like an orchid there, right? It's not going to work. Then you also need to know, like, like you have a current probably like MVP or like a starting plan that could work, but does your scaled vision, whatever your end goal is, does that also work? Because those things can be different sometimes. Sometimes codes let like the small vision happen, but not the big vision. Okay? After you kind of look for these things online, because there's a lot of good online kind of county websites these days, then you need to probably contact someone in the county to double confirm before you make a huge investment in that land, just to double check. So I'll give you an example here. So how do you do a first pass? So oftentimes you're going to have to go to the county website to actually figure out the code and see what it means, right? But oftentimes, that takes a lot of time. The county websites are not set up properly. So how do you do a first, like, quick pass? Because you're going to be looking at a lot of parcels. So here on Zillow, I kind of have it filtered out to, 10 acres. I'm just looking at kind of lots. And just for simplicity, I put in the word farm here. And so I've gotten these kind of list of plots over in South Washington, North Oregon. So if I click on, for example, this one, and yeah, so this looks like a plot over here. It looks like it has some ground. I can see that it's not going to be viable for farming for some reasons, but we'll keep that out of the way just to play devil's advocate, just to go through the zoning here. So actually, the first pass I do through is through AI. And so we can use AI tools here. It says it has a zoning of R1. Usually the zoning details can be down here, but if that's not the case, we can do it another way. Let's say it says, so this has zoning of R1. What agricultural use cases are supported for this zone? And you can just ask your, it doesn't have to be Grok, whatever your AI tool of choice is. And then it's gonna kind of investigate the county rulebook for you, probably end up saving you a bunch of time, and kind of tell you like these are the type of activities that we can kind of do. And so it might take a while to search. While it's doing that, I can show you another tool. So I also use a tool called Regrid, so I can share the link of this in the description below. But you can just type in the parcel number, which actually I guess it did not find. Hello? That is crazy. Sometimes they are missing zeros. So sometimes the zero in the end get cut off here. So you can see now I picked this up, this kind of lot here. And it says single family residential on the zoning type here. So that doesn't look too good. Looks like we might not be able to do a lot of things. Agriculture are highly restricted to maintain the zone's primary focus on single-family dwelled attaching. Okay, so this is a residential, primary use case residential lot. So it's actually not going to work well for a variety of different types of farms. So we can discard this one, okay? And we can look at another one. Maybe... Let's take a look at this one. This one actually looks pretty good. Looks flat. Uh-oh, see, it's next to some houses. So let's take a look at this here. La la la. Ooh, that doesn't look good. Okay, farming grazing needs. Zoning is EFU. So wait, let's go here into regrid again real quick. And it's gonna pull up our little farm here. Yeah, that looks like the lot. Exclusive farm use district. Ooh. I'm actually not too sure what that means. I've never seen that before. So sometimes regrid will also give you a link to the zoning, like the ordinances of the actual county here, which is really helpful. So you can take a look here. But we can see that we have farming, tiling, plowing, harvesting are related, agricultural, forestry, fishing, and hunting. So it does seem like this is a pretty agricultural friendly district. And then we can also do a double check inside of AI, but I think this one is a much better one, and will be giving us a lot of different types of agricultural use cases. So this is the first pass you can easily do, in a couple of seconds here, and kind of analyze the zoning for the farm this way. After this is done, you need to do two things. You need to go to the actual county website, so you can use the ordinance link from regrid or find it yourself online, and then make sure that the code matches what you expect, and then there's going to be an explanation of what that code allows. So you should be able to understand that and see that it works through your farm type. Before you purchase the land, it's always important to double check and call someone on the county on the phone and actually talk to them directly, explain your business, explain what your vision is, and see if there's any hesitancy or pushback from them, right? Most of the time, if you've researched well, they're going to be on your side. They're going to want business. They're going to say, yeah, this is going to work well for this piece of plot here. So this is kind of how I tend to do it. And so yeah, that plot here, in Grok, it tells you that you can have a lot of different farming use types: livestock, poultry, cultivation, harvesting of agricultural products. So to me, this is almost like as good as it gets. It looks pretty good. So the next one is water. So water is very important and a very complex topic, right? Some farms cannot exist without it at all. Actually, I think most farms have to have at least some type of water, but for some of them it matters quite a lot more. And rights doesn't necessarily mean access, which doesn't necessarily mean reliability, and enforcement varies by use and location. I'm going to make an own video for the water because of how complicated of a topic it is and how important it is. It's going to be the next videos in this series, so if you're interested, check out that video after this video, and we'll keep it pretty short here in this one. So third is access, right? So you need legal access to your lot, especially if it's not on some road, some county road. How do you get to that lot? And a lot of times, lots not directly connected to roads, they have easements. So maybe you have an easement to get to that lot, right? But you need a legal definition for that easement if that's the case. Or you need to be right on a county road, okay? Now that's pretty much how it is. If you're not, you can't rely on some shared driveway or someone's gratitude, right? Because when money's involved, you have to make sure that you have a safely recorded lawful entrance to your lot. So I think access problems you can spot a lot more easily from the listings. And usually, if the listing doesn't seem to have access to a county road, it's going to mention in the listing if it has an easement, right, that gives you access, because sellers love advertising that. But I'll just maybe quickly go over one or two here. So I saw this one example, it says, boat access only. So yeah, this is definitely something you can't build a farm on, right? Because you can only access it by boat. It's not going to work well. So this is an example of one where it's clearly listed. Let's see this one. This one looks a little interesting, a little hard to get into. What else we got going on? Purposely was looking for lots that have, no access. So let's see this one. Looks cool, but looks more like a getaway cabin, right? Doesn't look like you got a good access to here. Doesn't look look at this. How are you gonna get here, bro? Not gonna have a fun time, right? So definitely make sure that it's on a road. If it's not on a road, you have a good easement, right? so that it's reliably accessible. It definitely, some of these recreational cabins like off kind of roads seem like good opportunities, but because of the access, they're actually not too reliable. So the fourth is topography. Flat land is expensive for a reason, right? It's because most farm types and projects outside of farm work well with flat land. Slope tolerance depends on farm type, so I'll go over that in the next slide. Drainage issues can be caused by slopes and also frost pockets, so those are like colder areas caused by slope and elevation changes, so keep that in mind. And the other thing is, if you have sloped or rugged terrain, the buildable area is not going to be equal to the total acreage, so that's also important. Now from the first video, you should have the farm type. Again, I'll link the first video in the description video below if you don't know what type of farm you want. But the farm type can have different slope tolerances. For example, timber. You can have a lot of different slopes, a lot of different hills, and when you have like a timber sort of farm. Same thing with livestock. So livestock tolerance is high, not as high as timber, but it gives you an idea like, okay, this is pretty flexible. Now, if you want greenhouses, right, you need flat land. You're not going to be able to build greenhouses on a bunch of like rugged slope terrain. So feel free to pause the video here to take a look for your farm. So going through quick examples, again, on the kind of west side of Washington, there are more hilly kind of terrains here, so we can maybe look at a couple of plots. Well, actually, this is a pretty flat plot, so I can already tell. So this is an example of a plot that looks pretty flat, workable with. So this is an example of something like a flat lot that works well. I think central Washington as well. Yeah, another flat lot, another flat lot. So all these look pretty flat. Another flat lot. So that works pretty well. And so now if you go to the west side, yeah, so this one is definitely, you can tell it already has kind of an angle slope coming from the east to the west side here. So something like grazing, again, I don't think the angle is enough that the grazing is not possible. I think it could work pretty well, right? But something like a greenhouse operation would be very, very difficult to manage on something like this, and like a produce farm might be difficult to manage as well. So I think the goal here is instinctively, when you look at a piece of land, you should get an idea of if it's going to work for your farm case. There are topographical tools online which you can look at all the kind of feet changes in depth, but honestly, I think if you're doing that, it's already heading down the wrong path. You're trying to convince yourself like, oh, something can potentially work. That's usually not a good idea. I think if you're looking at a slope and you're a little confused about if it could work for you or not, just go visit the lot and check out the depth perception in person. It usually tends to work out better and give you a clearer picture. So yeah, this is an example of one that might not work well. This is another one, I think. I was just looking at this one. Yeah, it goes again from east to west. Might be a good site for a residence, but because of the slope, I can already tell, like, yeah, it's not going to work well for something like a greenhouse or something like that. There's a big section on the hill on this side, so yeah, that also won't work too well there. Soil is the fifth one. So the important thing is you want soil where you can build stuff. You don't have problem building stuff. Growability matters less. So growability, is your soil support the type of, let's say you're an outdoor produce farm, the type of produce you want to grow. You can always improve that over time with fertilizer. But the buildability means like it's poorly drained soil. You can never put anything on it. Now, if you want to have greenhouses or structures that support your farm operation, you definitely want to care about the buildability of that lot. You don't want poorly drained soil, because poorly drained soil is not going to affect like septic systems, like all the foundations, like all these things, and it's not going to let you work your land the way you want, right? It's okay if a portion of your land is not buildable, if you want to use it for grazing, or if you want to use it for like simple crops, things like that, right? But keep that in mind. So that's important here. Soil maps are very helpful. So I'm going to kind of go over that right now, how to use a soil map basically based on with your farm type to make sure that the soil matches the outlook for your vision. So we're going to go through another example here. So on Zillow, I found this lot. It's in Chehalis, Washington. It looks pretty flat, and at least from here, it looks like we got some, I think there's a bunch of these lots next to each other. So now let's look at the soil feasibility from the NRCS tool. So this is the NRCS tool. It's not like when you go to the site, there's going to be like a button which you can click and it's going to open up the US map. The annoying part is there's no parcel or other details you can type in here. You have to kind of zoom in. But honestly, I know we give our government a lot of poop for a lot of different things. This is one of the best things, I think. So the US government maintains this map, and it's probably one of the best things that's done because it's a pretty useful map here. And so I've already kind of located the lot and zoomed down on it. So I'm gonna, you can use these tools to zoom in and zoom out. I'm gonna zoom in here, and then what you have is you have an area of effect. Define AOI by rectangle. So it's this rectangle right here on this little toolbar. So I'm gonna click on it, and I'm gonna highlight the lot from Zillow. I think it's this lot here on this side. And you just highlight this tool. It's gonna select it for you. It's gonna create an area of interest, and then you're gonna click the soil map on the top left corner here. So I clicked on the soil map, and you're going to see it's going to give you kind of the silty claim, 0 to 5% slope, so not sloping, which is great. And all you're going to type is give me buildability. So again, this is the first pass. Obviously, if you purchase the land in the feasibility, you want a proper engineer to go out, have a proper look, right? You don't want any risk. But here, it'll give you a good first pass here. It says drainage well managed, no major drainage issues. Permeability looks good. Buildability, it's good to moderate for residential and commercial buildings. Okay. Potential limitations will give you. It can affect septic systems, but for farming you don't need really septic systems, so that's okay. Buildability with standard engineering precautions is good. It's not poor, so I think most farming infrastructure, you have to understand, doesn't need like proper septic systems unless you're going like down like a specific farming type for like, let's say, dairy or things like that. But like this looks pretty solid for me. I think it can work pretty well here. So this gets a green check mark for me, this lot here. It makes sense too because it's kind of expensive, right? So let's zoom out and let's take a look at another lot. So one of the lots that we actually saw from before in the video when we were looking at the zoning surprised me actually. So this was the one we had seen in Molola. And this lot, I mean, I was taking another look at it after I just opened it up in the video. It's the first time I've seen it. It's been on the market for 2 days. And I was like, why is this so cheap? 19 acres? And for people that don't know, it rains a lot in this region too. So that's actually very good. And so I was like, let me look this up in the soil map. So I'm going to show you guys actually what it looks like. So I found the plot again on NRCS. It took me a while, honestly. So again, I'm going to click on the AOI here. Alright, and then I'm going to expand this. So it gives us the plot in the actual image. Yeah, it looks good. And then we're going to go back up to soil map here and give us these type of soils. So I actually looked it up, and it said the cultural silty clay loam, it says it's a problem child. So counties hate it for permanent structures, so you can't have permanent structures on here. And then the other one is borderline. So one of these ones, close to 40% of land you cannot build anything upon, and the other one is, it says, it's like limit bearing, over excavation, drainage required, so just a lot extra expenses if you're going to build any kind of permanent structure on the land. The interesting thing is they say it's not a buildable lot. So I think what they mean by that is you definitely can't build a house because the septic's not going to get approved probably in this lot. But I think still, from a perspective of produce farming, like if you just grow crops here, it's like not bad. So again, that's an insight into how you can do a first pass on look on the soil and buildability of the lot. The sixth is distance. So where do you want to sell, right, and how close your farm is to that spot. So pretty self-explanatory in that sense, but how much it matters for each farm is different. So for example, and I have a slide for this, if you have outdoor produce, the distance sensitivity is pretty high because you're going to be kind of moving those crops quite frequently. You want to be near the area you want to sell to. Okay, so we saw a lot of plots around Oregon, in Portland. We saw a lot of lots around Seattle. You you got to measure the distance with driving and how far that is. You don't want to be like 7 hours away from the metro area you want to sell if you have an outdoor produce farm. Now, timber, on the other hand, right, the distance doesn't really matter because you're going to be making, a shipment once every couple of years. You're not going to really be going back and forth often, so it's a lot less prone to that distance sensitivity. And then I have a why section here explaining why. So again, feel free to pause the video. The seventh is utilities. So cheap land, right, not usually connected to infrastructure. So you would have to calculate the cost of, where's the power that the county offers, how far away is that from the lot, so you have to kind of get the wire into the lot, you have to set up a transformer, a meter, all these things, right? So these are costs that you have to think about that are going to be part of your initial kind of budget. Same thing with water, right? So if there's no water connection into the lot, where does the county kind of have water? And we'll kind of go over that water in a separate video, like I said, because that can be done separately in different ways. But power distance, really turns out to be expensive if you're looking at thousands of feet. So keep that in mind. I think the best way to think about this is just have the parcel address in mind, or parcel or like address in mind, right? So that number, call the county, figure out where that connection is, and then get a general idea of like how close it could be. So that'll give you an estimate of how much it's going to cost. Finally, we got parcel shape. So on Zillow and on other tools, you'll be able to see the size of the lot and also the shape. So this is pretty easy to pick up on. So if you have a long, narrow strip, keep that in mind. It might still work for your case, right? A lot of times people don't like some narrow strip because they want to build a house and have like a bunch of like a square or wider acreage, and it might be cheaper for that reason. But if you're like doing produce farming, it could work well still, right? So just keep in mind the shape of the land and your vision of the farm, and make sure they are coherent with each other. You might not be able to get like a perfectly flat big square, which is like the ideal kind of situation, right? But make sure you're not trapping yourself by some weird kind of nooks and crannies in this parcel that can cause problems later on.
So that's it for this video, the Universal Land Checklist for the second video of the Farming Fundamental series. I will leave a checklist to download in the description below because there are a lot of steps and you need to kind of go through all of them in detail. It'll be kind of like very easy to check off on this kind of thing. You can print it out, anything like that, and you might find it helpful. So yeah, if you guys like this video or the last one, feel free to give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.